Welcome to the Clarity Digital Podcast. I'm El Sifadi, and today we're talking marketing analytics, AI, and smarter data-driven decisions with Kris Irizawa, COO of eBoost Consulting. Get insights on Google Analytics 4, attribution, campaign tagging, and how AI is transforming marketing performance. Let's get into it.
Chris, how's it going?
Doing good. Thanks for inviting me here.
Yeah, thank you for taking the time and joining our podcast. You and I met at Digital Summits last year. I think we were both on the sponsor side, and that's how we got a chance to talk. And we had a lot of good conversation on analytics and GA4 and campaign tagging and all that good stuff. But before we get to it, why don't you take a few minutes introducing yourself to our audience?
Yeah, thank you. I'm Kris Irizawa. I'm a COO at eBoost Consulting. And eBoost Consulting is based out of Southern California. We specialize in paid search, paid social, data analytics. We're part of a company called Principal Group, which is based out of Tokyo, Japan. And the agency, yeah, it's been around for 13 years or so. And we bring all the good stuff on the data analytics side. And I'm married with the eBoost Consulting, which we acquired about a little over 3 years ago out of Southern California. And we've been creating that synergy between the data and the paid media stuff. And yeah, so far so good. We've been servicing a lot of the US businesses in the US market, also some Japanese companies who come to US market, vice versa. So yeah, it's been a great journey so far. So far so good.
Japanese company, headquartered, right?
Yeah, in Tokyo. We have
Yeah,
about 100 employees there. Yep.
I don't know if I ever told you, I used to work for a Japanese company as the head of marketing. Those guys were like work hard, party hard type of environment. Is that the same with you guys or?
We are warriors, man. We work hard. We grind
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
But
yeah,
at the same time, we also respect the creativity. Being in marketing, you have to be creative, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
100%. Awesome. Thank you for the intro. You had a really good session at Digital Summit. Just analytics and the need for analytics for marketers. It really resonated with me because we work with a lot of marketers and they just install Google Analytics and they think everything's fine and just out of the box. And so what are some of your challenges and what are some of the tips that you can provide to marketers to better utilize the analytic platform GA4 or any other platform?
Yeah, for sure. So in the digital summit, I was one of the presenters, and I did talk about digital summit. Theme was really about AI. My angle to this was, hey, a lot of the ad platforms nowadays is running on AI, machine learning. It's a black box, and a lot of us as a marketer looking at the performance that comes out of it and said, hey, this is great or this is bad, and what can we do? And you tinker around with the ad platform and take a customer's budget, ad spend, and spend it away, and use creative and the data as a lever, right? However, we all don't know what the black box is within the Google and the Meta of the world. When you look at the analytics from various angle, there's a lot of things you can actually learn. How to say? There's a lot of things you could assume that the machine learning or the AIs of that algorithms, if you will, have made decisions on. But the data will tell you certain things that, hey, maybe that wasn't the case, right? Yeah. So a lot of times you hear things like, hey, it's so smart, you could just sit and forget. Set the broad targeting, everything will figure it out. Not really. So that was like the takeaway. And we had a lot of evidence on the slides and some of the high spending clients that we have and to show that, hey, a lot of the assumptions and hypotheses we had tested, it didn't turn out to be how it's supposed to turn out. A good example is like whenever like Meta changed like algorithm, some of the things we saw in mid August last year, and all of a sudden everything was great. But all of a sudden it crashed the conversion. And we couldn't explain anything until we reached out to Meta and got an explanation that, hey, it looks like it was the algorithm that was impacting your only because they gave more weight towards the attribution that was close to conversion. So anything that requires long sales cycles and stuff like that was heavily impacted. And we can't really explain that or make influence. So what can we do? And obviously you have to go back to the data and do your homework and then say, okay, now we have to start retraining the, algorithm to work in our favor. So long story short, I think there's a lot of marketers out there who really underestimate your data you have on hand, whether it's first party or third party. So yeah, that's how, and a lot of marketers who saw my presentation really jive with it, and it was great.
I actually could relate to that. We obviously, like you guys, we do a lot of lead gen and marketing. And I did run some campaigns for our own agency. Just we marketers are often busy with our clients. And sometimes we don't practice the word we preach for ourselves. I set the Google Ads campaign to like auto bidding and everything like that. Everything was going well, except that the quality of leads was extremely poor. If you just go by those AI and machine learning data, they get more conversions, but are they the type of leads we need? So it's really valuable for you to take some time, look into it yourself, and not so much trust those machine learning data. Again, there are good tools to have, in my opinion, for efficiency, but you have to definitely have that data scientist hat on.
Yeah, for sure. And we break down the data part in different, how to say, data analytics is a broad term, but there's our service is broken down in three things, if you will. It's like tag management, right? It's like how to collectively collect the right data, right? And it pass along to the right data to the right place, right? And Google Tag Manager, Telium, that sort of thing is probably strikes a chord with you guys. There's also the part of the analytics, which is actually doing the analysis where the data science come in. It's, okay, let me play around with Tableau and Looker, but how do you bring your analytics and discipline into creating a story? How do you build a hypothesis, test, and learn, and how to use the data to showcase what worked, what didn't? The analytics side or analysis side of things. And the third one is really about building the dashboards and stuff like building the data engineering side. So if tag management was like a skill set around JavaScript, how the website, web app, and mobile app works, like data collection, data engineering side is another game. It's okay, writing SQL queries, because an analyst might know SQL, but they might not know how to make dashboards and stuff like that, or they might not know the inner workings of ETLs and data pipelines. So there's the third pillar, the data services, where you need to be well versed with like data lakes, using tools like Fivetran, Supermetrics, the data in and out, and also building that right dashboard, which is a whole different skill set than just analyzing the data, if you will.
Yeah. What is a data lake? I've heard the term, but I don't know what it is.
The typical, I have to break it out. When a lot of marketers look at the Looker dashboard or Tableau dashboard, you're seeing the output, right?
Yeah.
So it's like when you drive your car, you see the speed and the RPMs and the gas, and whether the engine is hot or cold. So that's the output, right?
Yeah.
But the reality is that data comes from somewhere. So where does it come from? It comes from maybe that Looker is pulling data directly from Google Ads or Meta, or it's pulling from QBO, your accounting software. It might be pulling data from through API. Every time you click that button, it pulls the data. So that's great. That's a very novice first step that most marketers do. Oh, I'm going to connect my Looker to something. But when you start running like more complex business, marketing, you want that data to be stored, right? You could call it big data or small data. You might have some spend sheet data. You might have some customer data somewhere, but you can't just connect your Looker data to everything. It's going to start. Let's say you want to pull 100 millions record. Looker will crash, right? So you want the Looker to now connect to database like BigQuery or PostgreSQL or MySQL database. So in that case, the data is stored there. So you could shape and form the data the way you want. And then you have the Looker connect to that pre-templatized data, if you will. So the data lake is a place where you dump all your data.
Got it.
And I'm not sure if you ever heard of Databricks or like Snowflake. Those guys will handle that part really well.
The data warehousing. So is it pretty much very similar to that?
Yeah. Data warehouse, like my understanding of it is like data warehouse is like really organized. Data lake, because a lot of the data now is really kind of has its own kind of like shape and form of data. So it's a place where you just dump everything.
Yeah.
DA4, Meta, Google, CRM, like Salesforce. And then you shape the data in the way you want so that, it's only collecting the data you need. And then that could be stored as a data warehouse where your Looker Studio will connect to, where it's nicely formatted, like day by day breakdown, the spend by channel, impressions, clicks. And data lake doesn't have all that kind of like structure. So it's a one form of stage of how data is collected and stored.
Very cool. And then, one thing I'm glad you brought up about the beginner, and where a lot of people, we actually took over a client and they had a Looker Studio that was very slow because it's a bunch of APIs. And one of the things we did was exactly that. Kind of like we didn't use the database. We actually used Supermetrics to send data to I think their Google Drive, Google Sheets, and then read it from there. So that kind of speed it up a little bit and also reduce the amount of data that was showing. Because I think a lot of marketers, I think more is better. And I'm like, no, less is more. You just got to know what to ask. Like you have to go in there, ask a question and be able to find an answer. And I think that's, as a marketer, sometimes just asking the right question is the biggest part of the data analysis. So what are your takes on that?
To be honest, most of the agencies, they would have like resources around campaign manager,
Hmm.
account manager, and some creative form of a resource. And you work with a client, and that's great. For most cases, that works really well because campaign manager is really accustomed to the data they see in like the ad platform, right? It has a pretty good data sets in there. It has a conversion data, micro conversions like add a cart, initiate checkout, generate lead, that sort of thing. But when something goes wrong or when you start getting complex, like multi-channel, you start investing more a lot on different kind of marketing strategy. When you start like dialing up like the how to say the maturity of the marketing, if you will, then that's when either it goes bad and then you start to look into why things are going bad. Then you want to start looking at like GA4 and some of the customer data, and then when things are going great, maybe you're missing the upside. Maybe there's more you could do that you're just being sitting on the data and just being comfortable. So I think that's like the territory that we're actually really talking about here, because everything's working well. That's great for you, but we have customers who says, "I want to double my sales like in the next 2 months." In that
Hmm.
case, like you can't just sit in the campaign that's working well, or if a customer is struggling with a conversion, then we really need to understand the funnel where it's broken at a granularity that the ad platform cannot provide.
And I think something I want to add to it, which just goes along the funnel, is when you do a multi-channel campaign, you got to be very open to look at have a more of a multi-channel approach to data analysis. And I'm going to give an example. We do a lot of e-commerce search and social marketing, and sometimes we have clients where somebody else is doing the paid search and we're doing the SEO or vice versa. And for this particular client, who was an e-commerce client, our organic traffic was increasing all the way to the holidays. Our organic rankings continued to improve, but then around the holidays, the organic traffic went down a lot. And they were panicking and they're like, "Hey, what happened?" And it didn't take me long because of my experience, I didn't have to really look at the data for too long. But if you could look that we saw that a lot of the homepage traffic was down. I'm like, okay, what's going on? We don't have full access to the Google ads, but we did have read-only access. And we saw that the Google ads team had quadrupled the amount of spend they were having on branded terms. Obviously, they're cannibalizing the brand a lot. It looks like the SEO is doing worse, right? Because they're bidding on their own brand. So SEO hasn't declined, our rankings haven't declined, but our SEO traffic drops because the paid search is taking a lot of that branded traffic, because typically they don't bid them for the brand terms, but now they were bidding on the branded terms. And this is a direct to consumer brand. So the branded
Mhm.
share is a lot. And so that didn't take me long to figure it out, but I did have to log into Google Analytics to see what's going on. And I saw the homepage traffic was down. I'm like, okay, what homepage has to be branded? It was just that came from a Strata experience and ended up being the case.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, that's why it's good to always have that mindset and also someone experienced to be able to say, oh, let me take like maybe 5 minutes of extra my time and let me
Hmm.
look into other platforms to see what's going on. A
Yeah.
lot of times, like marketers are so comfortable in their Meta platform or Google Ads, they
Yeah.
forget to explore out of that. And
Mhm.
that's a very kind of human behavior thing. But if you have an analytics team or some extra resource and experience to work as a team and says, hey, this is an issue I'm seeing. What do you see? And you
Yeah.
can have that conversation. So yeah, we had something similar experience too. Where, hey, great, the advertising is doing really great, but overall sales is like stagnant. What's going on? And then our ad spend to relative to revenue, as a business, the client's business, like they want to always shrink it to a point where it's instead of being like 30%, they want it to be 10% of revenue being the marketing dollars. That's a healthy way to look at it from a business standpoint. But hey, ad is doing great while the budget is going down because the ROAS is improving. However, the overall sales is like stagnant. Let me look at why. GA4 will tell you the story to your point. Like maybe it was organic search, organic social. Hey, like 20, 30% of revenue is from organic, but year over year, something's like it's going down. What's going on? The next thing you do is look at Google Search Console. And Google Search Console was
Yeah.
interesting. I see this in multiple clients. I don't know what's going on, but maybe it was the AI overview changes on Google side. I don't know. But what happened was they invested a lot in like influencer marketing and all this awareness stuff, which is great because you see the search volume went up like 1.5x year over year. However, even the position and the click through rate position was like improved it as well from an SEO standpoint. However, click-through rate dropped significantly. It's like, why would the click-through rate drop when your position increased and the search impressions actually increased, right? So there's a lot of hypothesis of that. Oh, maybe something's going on the Google side, like AI overview taking over a spot where first position of organic is like way down than what it used to be. So now we have a hypothesis of, oh, okay, yeah, we have a situation where we are bidding on branded terms, but the ad spend is actually going down. So that can't cannibalize the amount of visibility that it's getting on search when it's actually doing great. So what's going on? So it's a more of a macro thing. So like, how do you make up for that? Then you get into details like, let's go at the winning keywords and try to make that better than what it used to be. So you get in the game of SEO, right? But to get to that conclusion, there's the steps of like data you have to look at and really conversate with client to make sure they align and understand.
Yeah, the key word that you just said was conversations. Like you can't just go send an email, hey, what's going on, or create a task in the project management. So look into it. You have to have conversations. You have to have collaborations. Yeah, between different marketing channels, between different members.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, conversation is very important. You mentioned about B2B. Obviously, the sales cycle for some type of B2B products and services are very long, but the advertising is really good at getting the lead volume.
Mhm.
But we don't know if it's quality lead, right? Because so really the quality is really defined for every client differently. So, if you have a client organization where sales and marketing is siloed, the marketing team is just spending dollars on getting the lead. And over time, I don't know, months later, the sales team might complain to the marketing team, say, hey, your agency is not doing a job getting a good lead for us. Our commission and sales is down on the line. Get your ducks in a row, and the marketing freaks out or whatever. So I think that conversation that within the client with the client is one thing, but also it's also important to be on the client side to have that kind of healthy conversation. Hey, if you told me the quality of leads we're bringing in as a team is not good
Yeah.
for you, then they could have put some measures in place, right? So it's that iteration that has to be fast. And just because it's B2B, it doesn't have to be slow, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. And like they have to give you feedback, right? If they're quiet and not saying, and all of a sudden after 3 months, and come and say what's going on, well, I thought everything was going great. So I think
Uh-huh.
those ongoing collaboration between sales, marketing internally is very important. And another thing that you mentioned about like Meta, different platforms have different attribution models. Like, and we have had challenges with Meta, for example, counting conversions differently, and then Google Analytics. So you also have to pick a source of truth. It's like, hey, this is what I'm going with, or else you will be all over the place. So what are some of your feedback on how you can, there's all these different tools that analytics tools that all have their own the ad platform tools. Is there it's pretty much your Google Analytics or web analytics is your source of truth, or do you believe in a multi-analytic
Yeah. I,
analysis philosophy? Yeah.
yeah, that's a really good question. I think about this a lot and I don't have a conclusion yet, but right now, as of this moment, my thoughts is that I like to look at it different phases. What I mean by phase is more of maturity of the business on both agency side and client side. Everything on the agency side is happy. Everything is so simple and happy when you're just managing like one, hey, I'm a Meta only advertising agency. And then
Yeah.
the client, if the client is just like starting up and Meta works well for them, that gets to the sales target they want in 1 year or 2 year, that's great. But in the second phase in their business journey, they're gonna want more sales because it's actually doing great. Now they're gonna say, hey, do we need to spend more on Meta or do we need to diversify? And that question is most likely gonna be, you're probably not spending enough in Meta, so let's spend more. And when you spend more, things gonna be more tricky because now you're talking about awareness campaign, ASC, prospecting, retargeting. So even with that budget, you could get more complex. And then your analytics is probably still not that complex, but it's good enough. And the next thing is the next phase. Oh yeah, our business has quadrupled, and now we are a multi-million-dollar small business, and we feel like we need to diversify a little bit more with the channel. That becomes a little bit more complicated. Then now you actually invest in Google and Meta, right? This is where hey, these two platforms makes up maybe like 60-70% of the market, right? So it's no brainer to go with these two, right? And okay, fast forward, and then you start dealing with mid-size and enterprise clients who just spending so much money that even with the Meta, when you start understanding your target audience, then you worry about the reach, right? There's only so much reach you could do in Meta, even though they're like there's shit ton of active users in there. But when you start slicing and dicing it to your particular audience that you want to go after, it might be a very like 30, 40, 50 million TAM or something, target total addressable market. And then when you start running like a large amount of dollars within Meta, you start exhausting the reach. You start reaching them many times with different ads. Then it becomes like a creative and trying different creative game. Business needs to reach more. And I mean, you might have a different platform that reaches the same type of audience, but who have never seen your ads on Meta on Instagram. So the discussion here at this level becomes way more complicated because you need to look at, hey, this reach volume, are we tapping out the TAM? And how many times are they seeing the ad? Are they seeing the same stuff? No. And then if they see this, are they converting somewhere else? So it gets a lot more complicated. Now, within that segment of business and the maturity and the agency, and you could splice it out in a way where, okay, they're so big and so advanced, they have to buy like a large, like very big attribution solution that costs like thousands of dollars a month. Okay, if that's what you need, sure, do it. But there's also another segment of within that large upper mid-sized clients where, hey, you're not there yet. You're not ready to invest in that capability, but you're not taking advantage of the GA4 and stuff like that. What GA4 has like data-driven attribution. A lot of times they don't have the UTM parameters right. They don't have the event tracking right. Even if you get it right, there's data-driven attribution. And that alone tells you some story about the right marketing mix you should be going after. So are you doing the basic things first before you start getting to boil the ocean with my enterprise tool? So I look at that in different phases and I say, where do you fit in that journey and maturity curve, if you will, and say, what will be the right solution to you? So whenever you have prospects or leads who their mind is way ahead, but then they're not really get the basics right. Sometimes when you tell them, hey, before you get there, let's do this basic right so that your ads are performing, you get the credit, you look good.
Yeah.
Sometimes they don't want to hear that. And it's
Mm.
unfortunate.
In my opinion, the way we approach things, be like, hey, we're an extension of your team. We are your partners. We're here to help you. So we're not like although the healthy competition is often could be considered as a good thing, but in this case, you really want to team up, not compete. You brought up the data-driven attribution. This is a new attribution Google Analytics 4 has. It's what makes it a very unique version of GA Google Analytics compared to the previous ones. The previous ones, I believe they had like first click, last click. It was a lot more manual. Do you mind at a very high level explaining what a data-driven attribution is?
Yeah. It's so if we ever use GA, Google Analytics, we're pretty much accustomed to seeing like a report that shows first click, linear, time decay, last click. And we're like playing around with it and then say, okay, this is great. And we can actually cut the story in a way we want.
Yeah.
Hey, Meta's not converting. Oh, but guess what? If you look at first click, it's actually doing well. And it was a very interesting tool from that perspective.
Yeah.
But I don't know where, don't quote me on the source or if it's accurate or not. But from my understanding, I think only few percent of the marketers use that feature. So the reality is people are talking about attribution, multi-touch, all this stuff. But the reality is people weren't even accessing that feature and they weren't capitalizing on it. So I have to guess that Google at one point said, nobody's using this stuff. Like, why do we need it? Why don't we just tell them like with what we think is a good place for them to focus on? And so DDA, data-driven attribution, is where they say, hey, they have all the inputs from the UTM parameters and all the touch point on the website. Google's going to say, hey, we're going to weigh all those consideration and say, hey, if this one conversion happened on this various touch points, and we see a certain pattern that, hey, more people are actually taking that path, then let's put more weight on where that's actually influential. So that's why you see some of the GA4 report on conversion like in a decimal. So in one order is like split into 0.5, 0.2, 0.3 and stuff like that. So wait, is this a conversion or is this like, how do you read that? It's because it's giving, Google has its own way to reallocate that one conversion to appropriate touch points and sources. And you might call that a black box. Hey, I don't understand that. That's fine. You can read up the documentation, how that works. Another thing is GA4, you can actually export the raw data into BigQuery. So if you're really skeptical, yeah, your raw data is there. Talk to your data engineer and analyze it. so it's you and build your own algorithm if you don't want to use it. But to me, it's a more and the same. You can say the same thing with Meta or Google Ads by itself too. Okay, Google Ads is tricky because it's like retroactive, right? It's like today you got one conversion, but 3 days later you look at it and that conversion is like, oh shit, it's 3. That's great. sometimes they disappear.
Yeah.
I've seen, I think demand gen or something like that the conversion disappears sometimes. So that platform by itself has some unique stuff going on. I guess to go back to your question is if you're doing Meta on its own, it's great, that works for you. You could always adjust the attribution window to see if whether your view through is working or hey, and recent clicks is not working, but when you open up the conversion window, that's great. That's good for you. Same with the Google Ads. But when you start becoming multi-channel, if you want to make a better decision around like where should I spend more or less, GA4 is still a good place to look at. Hey, you know what? It looks good based on data-driven attribution. It's telling me that Google Ads is actually converting better than Meta. It's showing me zero point 0.5 versus Google Ads is showing me like zero point 0.8 or something like that, right?
Yeah.
In that case, you could say, okay, let me spend X% more on Google Ads because that seems to be doing well. And you could like splice it up by campaign and different kind of tactics, so placements in there.
How would I know if my content is working or not in GA4? We don't have stuff like bounce rates anymore. I don't know if bounce rates matter. What are some of your high level tips that for us, especially for blogs and webinars, how do you evaluate if your content is working?
Even though people say the bounce rate is not there anymore, so there's a metrics in GA4 called engaged session. So that basically that's people who didn't bounce and stayed on the website for X number of seconds. So
Yeah.
if you just want to, it's a positive way of looking at people who didn't bounce.
Yeah.
It's there.
Yeah, it's there.
So take an inverse of it, and that just shows you which content is actually not engaging.
Yeah.
Another thing is, I'm a how to say big fan of like segmentation.
Mhm.
So not really like a marketing segmentation type of thing, but within GA4 or Google Analytics, like there's a Explorer report where you can actually go in and create like custom reports.
Yeah.
So GA4 has like different dimension or a way of what's the right way to there's an event data, session data, and a user data. Yeah. So if you're able to create a report that says, hey, my customers who have purchased from me, a user who have purchased from me, and I want to see which source it came from. And instead of the source, you could always have a dimension called pages.
Mhm.
So you could say, of those people who have converted, show me all the pages they have touched, right?
Oh,
So in that case, you can see, and when you take out like the cart, checkout pages, billing pages, thank you pages, whatnot, you can start seeing which are the kind of popular content that people have actually touched from the customer base. And you could do the same with, hey, people who have came to the site and did not purchase, and show me the pages they have touched, and also the
Yeah.
landing pages they entered from.
yeah.
And you could do the kind of Excel and Tableau and do whatever it is to kind of understand. And you could start seeing like the difference, right? And that difference is very insightful. Oh, wait a minute. Like in our website, if I look at the people who actually contacted us through the form, right? What pages are they actually looking? Most likely they look at our about pages and then they look at our services pages. But then what if they're job hunters? So then you go back to the segment and tweak a little bit. Okay, people who have contacted us but never visited the career page. And that's a little more refined way to look at people who actually try to reach out to us and then look at, did they only look at the homepage? Sure, they did. But if you look at the other pages they have touched, it's always going to be services and about page and stuff like that. And if you look at the land page, they might have came from like a blog page or something. So in that case, you could see which content was sticky for the certain type of segment, right? And people who don't buy from you, you can see which page is not effective. So it's e-commerce to see which product is popular.
Sure.
You know?
Sure.
But you do the same with the GA4 content pages report and landing page report. I would look at these two. The landing
This
page is
is a
where they
really-
entered from, right?
Yeah. This is a really good way to look at things. And usually the way traditional marketers have determined if the content is working or not was by what Google used to call micro moments. I did a download, did I watch the video all the way to the end, did I join the newsletter, like the micro conversions. And basically you're just saying that, no, look at your macro conversion, but look at which pages were involved, right? Am I understanding that correctly? Yeah. This is really good. This is something like that I think gets you to the point because you could be joining newsletters and downloading ebooks all day and never become a customer. So you're just taking it straight to the point. And if they did, how many pages they touched, and those pages are the good pages. Or if they didn't convert, which pages they touched. So maybe you can improve those pages. This is really good. I will try to think this way a little bit more as a marketer. So, like you can, no matter how long you do this, we can always learn from each other.
I like to think if there's an increase in batting average, because we all, as a marketing person, as a business person, we always want to hit home run. What is that one page I could put out there that will convert everybody I understand the mindset and I totally want the answer to that every day. I'll pay a lot of money just to know what that is. But the reality is the incremental. Like, how do I become like Ichiro of the baseball world, right? How do I,
Yeah.
and to increase that batting average, yeah, just looking at refining and then looking at, instead of the everything, only looking at specific segment that works for you and
Hmm.
see how that's different from the other. And then if service pages and certain pages or about
Hmm.
pages, why not you add something in there that steer them to services pages or steer them to contact us
Yeah.
instead of a landing page white paper download? Like,
Yeah.
maybe people who learn about you, they want to learn something about your services next. So let's put that button towards the bottom when
Mm.
that's going to be a lot more better lead for you than, or the mechanism you put in place there is a lot more valuable than, let me create another white paper download page. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. And nowadays with ChatGPT and all these AI tools, I don't even know what the value of white paper is anymore. Like you can get the data and you write it quickly. I think that strategies become a little dated. Not all the time. There's always cases to have white papers if you have original data. But just as a marketing tactic, it's sometimes marketers tend to overuse that strategy. We should have you again in future, but let's wrap it up. Where people can find you, and then I have a couple of personal questions for you. So we can just
Yeah, no
talk
worries.
about your business, so where they can find you and stuff like that first.
Yeah, man. Yeah, you can always find me by reaching out to like going to ebooksconsulting.com as a website and reach out
Hmm.
there. And then personally, Kris Irizawa or Chris at ebooksconsulting.com.
Hmm.
And as a Twitter, it's K_Irizawa or X, if you will.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm out there. And you could LinkedIn me, message me through LinkedIn as well. So pretty
Cool.
open. Yeah.
Cool. Now it comes to the three personal questions. Any books or movie you have read or any movie you have watched, a show series that you recommend me reading or watching?
Yeah. How to say, work is so busy nowadays that I gear towards like content online that's more entertaining.
Yeah.
Before, when I was younger, it was the other way around.
Yeah. I know.
You know what I mean? So nowadays, I enjoy a lot of documentaries like Formula One. It's very competitive and there's a
Yeah.
lot of story in there. Yeah. And book wise, I'm rereading like Traction, A Good to
Hmm.
Great, Jim Collins stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are good. I read it once, but I'm trying to read it again. Being a different position, a different time in a career, sometimes you have different, how to say, appreciation for those content, and, have different kind of understanding, interpretation, if you will, depending on different stage of your career.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. And another question I would have is that when you're not marketing or analyzing data or geeking out, what do you like to do for fun or
Watch Netflix, play with my kids. I'm a dad of 3 kids, so I'm always busy with that. And that's like my priority right now, to be honest with you. And then I'm privileged to have a backyard, so I try to grill stuff in the weekend, just eat something nice, good.
backyard in California? That's a privilege. Yeah. And I think another question is like, this is more of how do you keep up with stuff? With AI, all the digital transformations happening, like, how do you juggle between the personal life and work and also learning new things?
Yeah, good question. After my kids sleep, coffee. To be honest, I'm thankful to my wife too. Sometimes, like on the weekend, I try to cut out my time for myself, or
Mhm.
even at night after kids go to sleep. I definitely tap around different sources. I try to be like grounded. I try not to go to the same sources a lot. So news.google.com or some curated platform where the news comes in. And I also like the YouTube algorithm.
Yeah.
So when I go into YouTube, every time you see something, your algorithm changes your content and what it recommends. So the moment I switch it to like business best practices about marketing stuff, you get a lot of recommendations that comes
Yeah.
with it. And then I flip through that recommendation and find something interesting. And I try to be agnostic. It's something I try to search things that I don't think of. That
Mhm.
I try to think about what would I not search that I should be searching?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I let the algorithm tell me what I should be looking at. So yeah, that's a interesting thing. I found a way to make content entertaining that way.
I watch a lot of shorts myself.
Oh,
Chris,
one more.
yeah, please. Oh yeah, go for it. Yeah.
And reading news outside of your country.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Because you get out of the whole algorithm and whatever it
Yeah.
controls. Those are really good tips that I will definitely adopt for myself. We're definitely out of time. We should have you again, but I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. And you have yourself a great day.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye bye.